Help me reach 1,000 subscribes. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. I read every comment. Thanks. She always believed she held all the power. It wasn't arrogance at first, more like a quiet belief that people never really left her, that they revolve around her gravity whether they admitted it or not. And for the longest time, Ethan did. He was patient to a fault, the kind of man who apologized first even when she was the one who crossed lines. His calmness looked like softness, and his softness looked like something she could twist without consequence. She had learned early in life that silence meant surrender, so she kept raising her voice, raising her expectations, raising the bar for him in ways he could never realistically meet. And every time he met one demand, she created 3 more. Her friends admired her confidence. They called her decisive, strong-willed, a woman who knew her worth. She soaked it all in, mistaking dominance for strength. Ethan rarely pushed back. He was steady, thoughtful, and conflict-avoidant in a way she misread completely. Instead of seeing a man try and keep the peace, she saw someone afraid to lose her. And that belief, poisonous as it was, became her favorite comfort. Over time, she slipped into patterns she didn't even notice. She withheld affection when she was upset, just to see how far he would go to earn it back. She turned small misunderstandings into elaborate emotional trials. If Ethan cooked dinner late, she questioned if he even cared. If he didn't reply to a message instantly, she implied he was losing interest. And each time, Ethan bent a little more, gave a little more, hoping that if he poured enough love into cracks, the relationship would feel stable again. But cracks, once ignored, only spread. Months passed, and something in her shifted. She grew restless with the predictability of his kindness, irritated by how steady he remained even when she threw storms at him. She started comparing him to men at her office, men who dressed sharper, spoke louder, carried themselves with an aggressive confidence Ethan never cared to perform. In her mind, admiration morphed into dissatisfaction. She began making little comments, disguised as jokes, about how other men were more ambitious, more assertive, more exciting. Ethan heard every word, even when she assumed he wasn't listening. The turning point came after a weekend trip she took with friends. She returned with strange, inflated calm, like someone who had practiced a speech and couldn't wait to deliver it. At first, Ethan thought she was simply tired. But then came the distance, the intentional kind. 1-word replies, 4 smiles, eyes that kept drifting elsewhere, like she was rehearsing some invisible script. And she was. One quiet evening, while Ethan was reading on the couch, she sat across from him with a posture that was too straight, a voice too smooth. She said she'd been thinking, that she'd done some reflecting, that she had realized she needed certain standards met if this relationship had any future. At first, he thought she meant financial goals or long-term plans. They had discussed those things before, but her list was nothing like that. She told him he needed to become more ambitious, more driven, more emotionally available, more responsive to her needs. She said he'd become comfortable, dull even, and that she couldn't build a life with a man who didn't push himself. She said he lacked fire. She said she refused to settle. And then, with complete confidence in the effect she assumed these words would have, she gave him an ultimatum. Change, or she'd reconsider everything. She expected fear. She expected him to scramble for reassurance. She expected him to promise the sun and stars just to keep her from walking away. That was the pattern. After all, she struck, he folded. She demanded, he delivered. But this time, when she finished speaking, Ethan didn't fold. He didn't even flinch. He just looked at her with an expression she couldn't decipher. There was no anger, no sadness, no panic. Only a kind of calm she had never seen on him before, steady, unshaken, quietly impenetrable. His silence stretched across the room, long and unfamiliar. It unnerved her instantly. "Well," she pressed, leaning forward, "don't you have anything to say?" But Ethan didn't answer. He didn't defend himself, didn't argue, didn't negotiate. He simply lifted his eyes to hers and said nothing. Her confidence cracked the second his silence held. It wasn't loud, but it was undeniable. She felt in her chest first, a sudden tightness that made her breath stutter. Ethan had always responded, always explained. always soothed. Silence was not in his vocabulary, at least not with her. She stared at him, waiting for the familiar scramble, the apologetic tone, the immediate reassurance she had built her sense of control upon. But none of it came. He simply watched her with eyes that felt like a mirror, reflecting the truth she had refused to see. The longer he stayed quiet, the more the power shifted, almost visibly. Her heartbeat quickened. A hint of panic clawed at her composure. She repeated his name, softer this time, trying to coax the Ethan she recognized back to surface. The one who never let tension linger. The one who would rather shrink himself than let her feel ignored. She even reached for his hand, but he moved it gently away. Not harshly, not with resentment. Just firmly. That tiny gesture shook her more than any argument could have. "What is this?" she whispered, trying to keep her voice steady. "Why aren't you saying anything?" Ethan finally blinked, but not out of hesitation. More like someone who had made peace with a decision long before the discussion ever began. He stood up, walked to the hallway, and returned with a small envelope. She frowned, unsure whether to feel confused or threatened. When he handed it to her, her fingers trembled. The envelope was thin, almost weightless, but something about it felt heavier than anything he had ever handed her. She opened it slowly, expecting a letter, maybe an apology written in his usually careful words. It wasn't a letter. It was a copy of a lease agreement. His new apartment. Signed. Dated 3 weeks ago. Her stomach dropped so hard she felt dizzy. "You already had a place?" Her voice cracked mid-sentence, disbelief slicing through her bravado. She looked up at him, searching for some sign this was a misunderstanding. But his face remained steady, heartbroken maybe, but resolute. "I moved some of my things out last weekend," he said quietly. "When you were on your trip." Shock rushed through her. "You planned this? You were just going to leave? Without even trying to talk to me?" Ethan's expression softened, but not in the submissive way she remembered. It was the softness of someone who cared deeply yet refused to drown for someone else's comfort. "I've been trying to talk for months," he said. "You weren't listening." She tried to protest, but the words tangled. She wanted to say he misunderstood, that she only pushed him because she wanted more from life, more from him. But another part of her, the part she had always ignored, knew exactly what he meant. She hadn't been listening. She'd been performing strength without realizing she was mistaking it for control. He continued, "You kept telling me who I should be, what I wasn't, what I needed to change. And I kept thinking that maybe if I did enough, you'd finally see me as enough. But then I realized something." Her pulse thudded in her ears. "What?" "That you don't want a partner. You want someone to manage." His voice wasn't cruel, just painfully honest. "And I'm done being managed." Tears stung her eyes. This wasn't how ultimatums were supposed to go. She was the one who made demands. She was the one who walked away, leaving him scrambling to fix things. She wasn't used to being the one left behind. It didn't make sense that he wasn't fighting for her. She had always believed he would. She counted on it. "I didn't think you'd ever leave," she whispered, the words falling out before she could hide them. "That's why I had to," he replied. The silence that followed was nothing like the one earlier. This one was final, heavy, real. She felt it settle between them like a door, quietly closing. She stepped closer, desperate now, reaching for his arm. "We can fix this," she pleaded. "I can change. I just tell me what you want." Ethan shook his head, not unkindly. "You only want to change because you're losing me, not because you finally understand what you've done." Her vision blurred, panic rising in waves. She opened her mouth to say something, anything, but he stopped her with a small gesture. Not harsh, just definitive. "I'm answering your ultimatum," he said softly. "And my answer is silence." With that, he picked up his bag, walked to the door, and paused just long enough to look at her one last time. Not with anger, not with triumph, with quiet grief for what they could have been, and acceptance of what they never were. Then he left, and for the first time in her life, she realized silence could be the loudest answer of all.